Father, send me. This is the prayer that the Church of the Nazarene has prayed from the very beginning as she sent her people into the world, a world that desperately needs Christ's transformational love. Today, we are part of a global movement in which God is actively redeeming His creation, restoring the broken through His beautiful gift of salvation offered to all. We have been called to partner with Him in this movement. This is why Nazarene Missions exists, to share His love, compassion, and peace as we start new Nazarene churches around the world. Entire communities are being transformed through the partnerships and relationships developed by our local churches. Nazarene missionaries are partnering with local ministers and lay leaders to bring restoration, share the gospel, and build sustainability within these communities. As each church body is developed, Nazarene Missions provides ongoing resources that help the church be effective in ministry and outreach. Our partnership ensures that the local church has a collective and immediate impact, an impact that will last for generations to come.
Well, welcome to this month's mission lesson. It's called Soul Searching. When we talk about the word eternity, we know that means a very long time. In fact, our human minds can't really grasp the whole meaning of eternity, but where people spend eternity does matter. And so during today's lesson, we will consider how we can become participants in searching for the lost so they may enjoy lives with Christ as well as spend eternity in heaven. In Luke 15, 8-10, the scripture says, "Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin.' In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." In the Church of the Nazarene in 2018, we welcomed 146,988 believers into membership as new Nazarenes. There were 222,511 decisions made to follow Christ, and 97,566 Nazarenes were baptized. But the percentage of people who need to know Christ in order to spend eternity with God is 100%. We know that is very important. For those who have known Christ a long time, sometimes we can get a little lazy or complacent. We can forget what it means to be lost, and as a result, we lose the urgency to seek the lost. So we need to do some soul searching, and that basically with two components. First, an inward searching of our own souls in order to discover if we have within us the drive to look outward, and then secondly, of course, to search for souls awaiting redemption. One point, we need to remember what it's like to be lost. The book gives an illustration of a mission group that went to India, and the author says that they pulled up to a large indoor market there, and the leader said that they had 45 minutes to meet again so they had some shopping time. And so this young lady, we'll say, had a bag of foreign currency. She didn't know the language, but she had a whole list of people she wanted to buy some things for back home, so they set out. Their leader instructed them to stay near their national guides, and they understood why once they got there, because the market was basically this huge place that had a complex series of stalls on various floors. And as the people squeezed in the aisles, they worked their way deeper and deeper until they figured they must have been underground at that point. At every turn, there were salespeople offering up their wares like colorful clothes or sparkling jewelry. And she paused under a little light bulb to inspect some tiny elephants that were carved from stone. So the price was right, and she wanted to get 100 of them. So I don't think they were very big, but she was thinking about would they survive the 13-hour flight back home. But she decided to risk it, and she saw some team members nearby looking at some other items, so she knew she had time. But when the vendor got to the last elephant, wrapping it, she kind of looked around, and there was no guide, and she didn't see any of her teammates. So her cell phone didn't work, she didn't know the language, and she didn't know how to connect with her team members to get out of that maze of shops. So she envisioned them climbing onto the bus and realizing she'd been left behind and they wouldn't even have a way to get a hold of her. And so she panicked and she felt alone and lost. So she grabbed her wares and began to push through the people. And a few turns later, she was happy because she saw her team and her guide. And they were just still shopping. So she got back up to them. She was relieved as she rejoined them. And needless to say, she didn't make any more purchases. She stuck close by the guide and didn't lose her way again after that. Now, we've probably all have been lost at some point, maybe as a child or even as an adult, and we know it's a horrible feeling, only equaled in intensity by the overwhelming joy once we're found. So if this is true in the human physical sense, how much more is it true in the spiritual? We need to have that memory help to compel us to seek others who have not met the Lord yet. But there is good news, because being lost is not part of God's plan. God's desire is that we be found. And as we saw recently in the story of the prodigal son, God isn't passively waiting for us. He's actively searching for us. And he comes running when we are still a long way off. Another part of it is researching and reaching out. Besides remembering your own salvation, what can you do to develop your sensitivity to the lost? Well, reading missionary stories or our books like we have is a good way to be reminded of the value of souls. And reaching out is also powerful. Another example given in the book was there was some young people from a creative access area, and they were attending a school in the United States near one of our Nazarene churches. There were a handful of church members that started to befriend the young people. And as the group grew, there was an 80-year-old woman named Barbara who became interested in helping. For most of her life, she had been a faithful church member and attendee, but something new happened in Barbara. As she cooked for and played games with the young people from a very different culture, she began to love them. And as her love grew, so did a deep concern for their souls. And through tears, Barbara confessed, "I almost can't stand it. It hurts so much. I want them to know Christ so we'll be together in heaven." But she also, through all this, has also shared that she'd never felt so alive as she did helping and being with these young people. She said her life before this ministry seemed pale in comparison to the energy she now has. And remember, this is an 80-year-old woman. Through the movement of the Holy Spirit, Barbara and her friends have led over 100 of these young people so far to Christ. So I guess it's still an ongoing project. As the new converts complete their studies, they return to their home nation as ambassadors for Jesus. Now, as Barbara's story illustrates, it's not just enough to find lost people, but you have to, because they're all around us, so we know where they are, but we have to go a step further and invite them into a relationship. As we offer genuine friendship, it opens a way for introducing them to the friend who sticks closer than a brother. Sometimes inviting even just one person into relationship with Christ can have surprising consequences. And this is what happened to missionary Carla Duell during 2018. She had an opportunity to receive training on reaching Muslims. There weren't many Muslims in the highlands of Papua New Guinea where Carla and her husband served, but during the last decade, the faith has spread around the coast there until there are about 30,000 Muslims in Papua New Guinea. So even though the odds of Carla encountering a Muslim were slim, she felt God prompting her to be prepared. So she went through the training and even purchased a book. And of course, a week later, what would happen but a Muslim imam or holy man walked onto the Kujip mission station and asked if someone could tell him how to become a Christian. So Carla took him through each prayer in her new book. And this man wept and held his hands above his head as he declared, "My shackles are falling off. I am being set free." Within a week, he asked if he could show the Jesus film to the leader above him. With some hesitation, the missionaries agreed because, in the Muslim faith, a lot of times it either can be dangerous or at the very least you shunned from your family and friends. So they prayed as this new believer, at great risk to himself, showed the film and shared his testimony. The leader and his entire family came to Christ. That man next showed the Jesus film to the leader above him, who also became a believer. This pattern continued until the top leader over all 30,000 Muslims in Papua New Guinea became a Christian. It was a whole domino effect. This holy man received an email from leadership outside the country declaring Papua New Guinea a lost cause for the Muslim faith. They were giving up. So our churches there in Papua New Guinea are preparing to receive many converts into their church families. Now, forming relationships, reaching out for the lost, it can be difficult. There may be roadblocks. Roadblocks such as pride and prejudice, which can blind us to those in need of salvation. Dr. Gustavo Crocker, General Superintendent of the Church of the Nazarene, said, "The good news is for everyone. As you search your soul, ask God to reveal anything that makes you consider someone unworthy. Let the reminder of your own desperate need of salvation serve as an impetus for loving as He first loved us." Also, besides maybe pride or prejudice, you may be focused on your own shortcomings. Thankfully, in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul reminds us that we are part of a body, so we share in the responsibility. It's not like you have to do everything. There are so many different roles to play within a church. Prayer, outreach, welcoming, teaching, even cleaning and mowing all contribute to creating an atmosphere where people experience a tiny glimpse of heaven here on earth. So instead of focusing on what you're not good at, instead do what you can. And so in a similar way, through missions, we have many opportunities to see souls saved. We may not be the missionaries that go to the other countries, but we have to remember that there's prayer. We can participate in the World Evangelism Fund through our offerings, and that these all connect us with the great work God's doing through the Church of the Nazarene, sending, praying, giving, and going. So as part of giving, I have my little alabaster box here. That's a reminder this month, as well as February, is our alabaster offerings. So we've been collecting this all in the month of September. So if you have any, when you come to church on Sunday or however you want to get it to us, please do so, and we will submit those. As you know, alabaster offering is for building of churches, schools, hospitals, buildings all around the world. So it's a great offering that we do twice a year. Also, we have our missionary books, as I mentioned earlier. Reading about other countries through our missionary books is another great way to feel for the lost, and we have 3 this year. If you need one, contact the pastor or myself. I'm here on Sundays usually with Julie and Keith, so I can give you a missionary book to read. And then finally, in closing, I want to do an illustration. The book mentions this illustration, and I thought it was really great. You can Google it or look it up, because I think he does almost like a whole message just based on this, but I'm just going to give you a quick one. And I don't know if you've heard of Francis Chan. I believe he's an author and speaker. I'm not sure if he's a minister, but he does a great illustration using rope. Maybe some of you have heard of this. My son said that he remembers this at NYC. But you see, think of the rope as a lifeline or timeline. This end part here is the part that we are here on earth. In comparison to the rest of the rope, I have just a jump rope, but if you can imagine a long rope, this is what our life is like here on earth. The rest of this rope symbolizes eternity. And Francis Chan goes on to talk about how we here are so concerned about just this little portion when we should be concerned about this part. So we want to think about that there's an urgency, because we don't have a lot of time in order to spend think about the future. So we need to think about that urgency when we think about lost souls around us, people we might come in contact with, that they're dying, and without maybe our witness or testimony, that their eternity is not going to be spent in heaven. It'll be elsewhere. So think about that. And again, you can look up this illustration by Francis Chan. He does a really good job about explaining that. So again, we thank Mario for his work in helping with filming me. We'll see you next month. Thank you.
Nazarene Missions provides ongoing resources that help the church be effective in ministry and outreach. Our partnership ensures that the local church has a collective and immediate impact, an impact that will last for generations to come. You and I are vital to this movement, a movement that is answering the call to make Christ-like disciples in the nations. This is only made possible through your prayer. your partnership, and your generous sacrificial giving. Nazarene Missions is a movement of God through the people of God.